Hello everybody, my name is Neil. Welcome to my channel, The Watchman's Watchman. The purpose of my channel is not necessarily for those who are unlearned in the subject of eschatology, but it's more for those who call themselves watchmen, like I do. And if you do not understand eschatology, if you're not versed in prophecy, you're not going to understand a lot of it that I speak of here. I skip over a lot of stuff and don't go into a lot of great detail because the people that I am talking to know this pretty well. If you want a definition of what God says a watchman is, you can go to Ezekiel 3:17 and says, "Son of man, I have made you a watchman over the house of Israel. Therefore hear from my mouth and give them warning from me." So this is kind of what the purpose of the watchman is, to warn God's people. And there is a verse that I want to make the focus of this message today, which is going to be an amazing message. That is Amos 3:7. "Surely the Lord God does nothing unless he reveals his secrets to his servants, the prophets." So I do not call myself a prophet. I would never call myself a prophet, but I do consider myself to be a watchman. So the point of this verse and the point of this message is God does nothing without telling his people first. He didn't destroy Sodom and Gomorrah without letting them know. He did not flood the earth without informing Noah, and he gave him 100 years to build the ark, and he preached the whole time that he was building the ark, warning the people that the floods were coming. So God does nothing without warning his people first. So that's the main thing here. It has been a long time since I've made a video, a very long time, and but I have a message today that's just going to knock your socks off. It's unique, something that I have been searching the internet for a couple years, and nobody's touched this subject except for a man by the name of Daniel Matson. It was an associate of mine, a fellow watchman, which I gave this word to a couple years back, and he is he wrote a short paper on it. I'll include a link down below. But he left a lot of details out, a lot of the details out. He only just barely touched on the subject. So this is something that God shared with me a couple years back, and it literally knocked me out of my chair when I found this. It took me about 2 months of going back to the same things. God take me back to the same thing over and over and over again. And I kept asking God, what are you trying to show me? I could not figure it out for the life of me. What are you trying to show me, God? What is it here that you're trying to teach me? And I'll explain all that to you. And it literally, I got up from my chair, I stumbled, and I fell. Jesus said that we do not know the time and the season. We do not know the day nor the hour, but we do know the time and season. I mean, he told us we would know the time and the season. And many of us talk, we say, Maranatha, Lord return, the Lord's returning soon, the Lord's returning soon. But I wonder how many of us actually believe that, because we go about our lives, and I'm not seeing a lot of Christians acting as if God's going to return in the next few years. They live their lives as if God's not coming back for another 10, 20, 30 years. And quite honestly, with what God showed me, I think it's going to be very, very soon. Very soon. And when I'm done with this, you're going to think the same thing. Before we move on, I just want to touch one more time on Amos 3:6. What are the things that us watchmen are watching for? You ask, what are we watching for? We are watching for the return of Christ, but more importantly, the rapture. Because after the rapture, the church is out of here, the only people we will be concerned with, that will be concerned with the second coming of Christ, will be those who will be left behind. Those who will have been left behind. They're going to need YouTube videos. They're going to need our books. all the materials we leave behind so that they know where they're going and what it is they need to do to be saved. Um, you know, chapter 6 in Revelation says that there are many that will come out of the Great Tribulation. So people will be saved during the tribulation. If you're watching this video and the rapture has already happened, trust me, you will be saved from eternal damnation. But unfortunately, you missed the rapture and you missed the wedding supper. So you, I would not want to be one of those left behind. Absolutely, it will be hell on earth, and it's called the Great Tribulation for a reason. But before I get started, speaking of Great Tribulation, I have something very important to share with you. Before I get into the revelation that God gave me, we have to clarify something, and it is something that as Christians and as teachers and as watchmen and as those who shepherd flocks, we need to get this straight. We need to fix this, and that is the word tribulation. If you are a pre-tribber, sorry, you're too late. We're in the tribulation now. And you say, well, what are you talking about? Most of us, when we use the word tribulation, we are talking about Daniel's 70th week. But Jesus in Matthew 24 spoke of a time of trouble that has never been before and never will be since. It never has been since there has been a nation. And he called that trouble Jacob's trouble. At that time, Michael shall stand up, and the great prince who stands watch over the sons of your people. There will be a time of trouble. There shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to that time. And at that time, your people shall be delivered. You have to understand, there was no New Testament when Jesus preached. The New Testament was created because of his teaching. So the only thing he had to deal with was to explain himself with was the Old Testament. And when he said the time of trouble, he was referring to this in Daniel. So you have to ask yourself, what is that? What is the time of trouble? The time of trouble, if you go to Genesis 29 through 35, and I suggest you read it for yourself, Jacob stole the birthright from Esau. He stole the blessing from Esau from his father Isaac. Was afraid that he was going to be killed. His mother said, run see my brother Laban, in basically what is now Syria. He goes there. He works 7 years for Rachel's hand in marriage, only to get Leah. He gets Leah. And then at the end of the marriage ceremony, which lasts a week, he gets Rachel, but has to work another 7 years. And then after that, he works another 6 years. And it takes him, best as I can estimate, it looks like about 2 years to get from Laban's home in Syria back to his father's house, his father and mother's house, in which time he wrestles with the Lord. His hip is dislocated. He's got a huge band of livestock, cattle. He's got children. He's got servants. And so this whole procession moved very, very slowly. Theologians believe it took him the time of Jacob's trouble was 21 to 22 years. 21 to 22 years. So when Jesus spoke of the time of trouble has never been seen, he's not talking about 7 years. He's talking about 21 or 22 years. And I'm from here on out, I'm just going to say 22 years. So the problem we have here with the word tribulation is the same problem we have with the word love. You love your parents. You love your dog. I love my guitars. You love your children. You love your friends. You love certain foods. You love certain desserts. There's all kinds of things we love, but there's one word we use. We use the word love. That is not a good way to describe many, many different things. The same is with tribulation. We have one word that describes Jacob's trouble, the 70th week of Daniel, which is predicted. When we say we are pre-tribbers, what we mean to say is we are pre-70th weekers. Right? And then there is something referred to in Revelations as the Great Tribulation. Now, I believe that the word great is not an adjective. I believe it's a pronoun. I believe it is part of the name of a time period called the Great Tribulation. In the Great Tribulation, there are two time periods. There's the wrath of the Lamb, which covers the seven seals, and then there's the wrath of God, the bowls and the trumpets, or trumpets and bowls. This is the Great Tribulation. And when Jesus spoke of it, I firmly believe, and I've gone back and read all this, and you can read it either way. You can read it as an adjective, you can read it as a noun. The Great Tribulation, I believe, is a time period within the 70th week. So, okay, so what do we have? We have Jacob's trouble, which is 22 years. We have the 70th week of Daniel, which is 7 years, and we have the Great Tribulation. This is where it gets interesting, and the revelation that God gave me starts to kick in. We have taught ourselves through reading Revelation, and this mainly comes from Revelation chapter 11. We have taught ourselves that the time period of the Great Tribulation of the 70th week of Daniel is 3.5 years and 3.5 years. Okay, where does that come from? That comes from Revelation chapter 11. And it reads, "Then I was given a reed like a measuring rod, and the angel of God stood, saying, Rise and measure the temple of God, the altar, and those who worship here. But leave out the court which is outside of the temple, and do not measure it, for it has been given to the Gentiles, and they will tread the holy city underfoot for 42 months. 42 months. And then continuing, and then I will give power to my two witnesses, and they will prophesy 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth." So what we have here is we have 42 months. Now, months is not referred to very often. The term month is not referred to very often in the Bible, and when it is generally referred to as being prophetic. So, 42 months, a prophetic month is 30 days, so 42 times 30. Alexa, what is 42 times 30?
42 times 30 is 1,260.
Okay, 1,260 days. But then, the two witnesses will prophesy 1,260 days. Why does the Word of God say 42 months for one thing, and then immediately following 1,260 days after that? Very interesting. I believe that the 42 months is prophetic, and the 1,260 days is not prophetic. So, if we are looking at a prophetic 1,260 days, that is generally not referred to. A prophetic day in the Bible is usually a year. So that's 1,260 years, not days. And then the two witnesses prophesied for 1,260 days. So we read this and we think we got 1,260 days. That's basically 3.5 years each. You put them together, that puts the two witnesses right in smack in the middle of the 70th week of Daniel. Tribulation, Daniel's tribulation. And so we believe that everything is divided evenly. 3.5 years and 3.5 years. Now it does say times, and half a time. That is 3.5 years. So there is a division. But here's the thing. Jesus said that unless those days were shortened, no flesh would survive. So this great tribulation, this wrath of God, I don't believe it's 3.5 years. It could be as little as a year. This changes everything that we see about, everything that we think about the timeline between the start of the 70th week of Daniel and the return of Jesus Christ. Going back to the 42 months. This is really interesting. We have this number that keeps showing up. 1,260. 1,260 days. But we see here we have a prophetic timeline in which that could be 1,260 years. Could be both. One could be a shadow or a type, and the other could be literal. So that's not really what I want to share with you today. What I want to share with you today is something about the number 1,260. Going back to Daniel. Going back to Daniel chapter 12. At verse 12, I believe. Verse 11. And from the time that the daily sacrifice is taken away, and the abomination of desolation is set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Daniel 12:12. Blessed is he who waits and comes to, you ready for this? 1,335 days. Blessed is he who waits and comes to 1,335 days. Okay, we're in Jacob's trouble and the 70th week of Daniel and the great tribulation, God's wrath, the bowls and the trumpets. Nothing has ever been worse than this, and nothing ever will be worse than this. What could possibly be blessed with all this going on? I can only think of three things. The obvious one is the return of Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior, the Lion of Judah, come back in justice, set the world right. The rapture, where we get pulled out of here. And the only other thing that I could come up with would be considered blessed in a horrible time, and I really don't believe this, but it's the rebuilding or the opening of the temple, the new temple. I think that most likely it's going to be the return of Christ, which what I'm saying is that the rapture will have already happened. The temple will have already been rebuilt. Okay, now this is the part of the video that I have been waiting to share with you. Starting in about 2014, I retired from a 20-year job at Intel Corporation, and I got a pretty good package. I spent the next 2 years reading everything I could get my hands on. I read through the entire Bible, and sections of it I read 5, 6, 7, 8 times, and I've read through the Apocrypha, through the Hidden Gospels. I read Book of Jubilees, Enoch, the Book of Jasher. I read a lot of scriptures, a lot of different books. In the course of this, somewhere around, I believe it was summertime, because I remember I was studying outside, God kept leading me to this scripture here, Daniel. Go your way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed until the time of the end. Many shall be purified, made white, and refined, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand. but the wise shall understand. Okay. I knew that God was trying to tell me something. Something that had to do with the numbers 1260, 1290, and 1335. It also talks here about the abomination of desolation. There are 3 books in the gospel that detail Jesus' talk after the Sermon, the Olivet Discourse, the Sermon on the Mount, and where Jesus, when the disciples asked him, what will happen in those days, and how will we know that it's time for your return? And that is Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21. Each one of those books talk about, Matthew and Mark talk about the abomination of desolation, and Luke 21 talks about the abomination. And then here in Daniel, chapter 12, verse 11, again, the abomination of desolation. You know that the abomination, I don't need to tell you, is the proper translation is the abomination that causes desolation. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of in Daniel, by Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, whoever reads this, let him understand. Okay, this is where it gets really good. This is the part that I've been waiting for. Back to Amos 3:7. God does nothing without telling his servants, the prophets, first. I have heard it said so many times. And I'll tell you, it makes me angry. No man knows the day nor the hour, not the angels nor the Son, only the Father who is in heaven. That's what Jesus said while he was on the earth in his terrestrial form. The Word became flesh, John 1:1. Do you really believe that when Jesus ascended back to heaven and sat at the right hand of God and took back all his rights as God, that he does not know when he's returning? Do you think that Jesus Christ doesn't know when he's returning? I hear so many people quote that verse over and over again. No man knows the day nor the hour, not even the Son. Well, first off, I don't know if this is true, but it has been, I have read that the term nor the Son wasn't in the original Greek, that it was added during the translation into King James in the 1600s. So I don't know if that's true or not, but the point is, do you really believe that Jesus Christ is sitting on the right hand of God the Father and he doesn't know when he's returning? Seriously? Can you say that with a straight face? When he was on earth, he gave up some of his divinity to walk among us. At that point in time, he didn't know. Yes, he didn't know when it was that he was going to be returning. Angels didn't know, only God the Father knew. But he ascended, went back to heaven and at the right hand of God. He knows when he's returning. So please stop misquoting that. Now, a point of humor here. Even God doesn't know when he's returning. He doesn't know the day of the hour because there's 24 time zones on planet Earth and one international date line. So God can't answer that question, when you're coming back, Lord, until you tell him where. Because it's going to be a all-at-once event that takes place over the entire globe. So if you live in Los Angeles, Christ's return, the rapture, or Christ's returns, either one of them, is going to be at a different time than if you live in Shanghai, or Hong Kong, or Moscow, or London, or Paris. They're all going to be, and depending on what side of the international date line, it may be a Tuesday in Los Angeles, and it's already Wednesday in Shanghai, Shanghai. Hong Kong, whatever, someplace in China, someplace on the other side of the international date line. So that's a little bit of humor there. Nobody knows the date or time because it's an incomplete question. You have to complete the question first. Okay, so God does nothing without telling his servants first. If the rapture was to take place a year from now, and by the way, today is March 17th, 2020, just so you have a time frame when I'm making this video. I don't know when it'll be published, but it's March 17th, 2020 today. If the rapture were to occur 1 year from today, at some place between now and 1 year from now, the rapture, God is not going to change his nature. He's not going to keep it from us. He's going to let us know. So at some point, right before it happens, he's going to let his people know. Now, am I saying that I know when that is? Oh, no, I don't. But I do know something. Because God has shown me something very significant. He's given me a date. He has given me a date. I don't know what's going to happen on that date. But Daniel says, blessed is he who comes to 1,335 days. Blessed is he. In the midst of the bowl judgments and the trumpet judgments, something blessed is going to happen. I believe that's going to be the return of Christ, but I don't know. I don't know what it is. What we've been taught to believe is that the Great Tribulation, the wrath of God, takes place in the last 3.5 years. That's way too long. I believe it's going to be anywhere from 1 year, 2 years, 6 months. It's going to be much shorter. That means if you are a pre-tribber or a pre-70th week, I used to believe that because in Revelation it says we will be saved because of we persevered, we will be saved from that trial. But it doesn't get bad till the Great Tribulation. So I'm a pre-Great Tribulation, tribulation-er. I don't know if that's a word. I don't believe that the rapture is going to take place at the beginning of the seventh year. I believe, well, I personally, and I'll tell you right now, I believe, and I'll explain why in a minute. I'm on that path. I believe that we're already in the 7th year. Now, this video goes out to three of my favorite YouTube prophecy guys. I love these guys. Perry Stone, Steve Cioccolanti, and Greg Laurie. Those guys, in that order, those are my favorites. I'm sorry, I said Steve Perry. Steve Cioccolanti plus Perry Stone gives you Steve Perry. I don't believe Stephen Perry was a prophet. Great musician though. Don't stop believing, Jody. Anyways, Perry Stone. Perry Stone says that we are not in the tribulation. And Perry, I love you and I respect you. I respect you immensely. But you say the 4th seal, Revelation 6, during the 4th seal, that 1/4 of the earth is killed. And Perry, you are a man of detail, but you missed one here. You missed a detail, and that detail is that it says power was given. Power was given to kill 1/4 of the earth. Chapter 6, 4th seal. Verse 8, and I looked and behold a pale horse, and the name of him who sat on the horse was Death, and Hades followed him. And power was given to them over 1/4 of the earth to kill with sword, with hunger, and with death, and by the beasts of the earth. It doesn't say here that a quarter of the earth was killed. So if you go and look up the word power in the, if you look up power in Strong's Bible, you look at the Greek is G2532, and it is Kai, pronounced K, and it is cumulative force, basically authority. Cumulative force, authority. Authority was given to kill. A fourth of the earth to kill with a sword, with hunger, and with death, and by the beast of the earth. So, this is the wrath of the Lamb. It doesn't get bad till the sixth seal. Everything from the first seal to the fifth seal could be happening now around us. But when you hit the sixth seal, I looked and when he opened the sixth seal, and behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became like blood. Well, that obviously hasn't happened yet. So, I believe this is taking place in the first part of Daniel's 70th week. Steve Cioccolanti and he could be correct on this, he believes that this is the seals, or pre-tribulation, and what he means is pre-70th week. I understand what he means. Interesting theory, Steve. It's very interesting, but what I'm going to share with you today, you may see that that becomes null and void. So, that being said, did I miss anything? I covered the no man knows the day or the hour. God always warns us what's going to happen. We now know, and I'm going to explain to you now, we don't know. I'm going to show you why the two witnesses may not be coming in the middle of the tribulation, as we have suspected. Okay, this is what I've waited for the whole time. So God kept leading me back to the abomination of desolation that sits in the holy place. The abomination of desolation that sits in the holy place, the holy mount. Okay, I'm going to offend some people right now. I'm going to offend some Muslims. I'm going to talk about the Dome of the Rock. The Dome of the Rock was built after Muhammad took his flight on his sacred horse, fiery horse, I don't remember, but anyways, takes him up to heaven. He takes his tour around heaven, and that is why they built the Dome of the Rock. That is where supposedly it took place. So I kept looking at this. Could that be a shadow or a type of the abomination of death that causes desolation? I believe the Antichrist is that person in the 70th week or the Great Tribulation. I believe that will be the Antichrist. But I do believe it could be a shadow or a type. So I started looking, and I looked on Wikipedia, and I'll find it and I'll post it on the screen. I kept looking for when the abomination of death, the Dome of the Rock was built. And is it really an abomination of desolation? Well, it's an octagonal building. And inside that building, there's an octagonal inner wall that it creates a hallway all the way around the perimeter of the Dome of the Rock. At the top of that, and you can look this is on Wikipedia, I'll post it. Around the top of the wall, on the outside and on the inside, it is written in Arabic. And there are many things written there, but amongst those things that are written there, on both sides, it says, God was neither begotten nor begot. Jesus was just a man, born of Mary. He is not God. Stop saying that. That's a rough translation. That's an English translation of a Arabic writing. So, to blaspheme the Holy Spirit is an abomination. There are many abominations in the Bible that are mentioned in the Bible, but saying that Jesus is not God is an abomination. So, the Dome of the Rock is an abomination that will bring forth desolation. So that means that the Dome of the Rock could be an abomination. What about when it was built? So I did a little research, and I went to Wikipedia, and I found that it was completed in the year 691 AD. 691 AD. Alexa, what is 691 plus 1,260?
691 plus 1,260 is 1,951.
So if I add 1,260 years to 691 AD, I get the year 1951 AD. So I poured through my paperwork. I poured through it, and I looked through the internet. I searched everywhere. I couldn't find anything significant that happened in 1951. Nothing. This search went on for a ridiculous amount of time. It was at least 2 months. And God kept nagging me in my prayers. He kept bringing me back. Go back to that. Look again, look again, look again. I kept looking, and I still continually found nothing. And then I started thinking, when you build a structure, that structure begins at the time that you break ground. If it's a religious structure, the ground has to be sanctified first, right? So the beginning of the Dome of the Rock was not when it was finished, but yet when it began, when they broke ground, when they sanctified the ground. So I started doing some research, and I found that it took 3 years to build the Dome of the Rock, which put its beginning at 688 AD. You ready for this? This blew me away. This blew me away. Alexa, what is 688 plus 1,260?
688 plus 1,260 is 1,948.
1948. Coincidence? 1948 AD. What happened in 1948? One of the greatest things, one of the greatest biblical prophecies of all time, the rebirth of Jerusalem. The rebirth of Jerusalem in 1948. Man, I was floored. I was floored. I got up out of my chair, it knocked me over, I fell over. I started praying, and I thanked God, and I just started weeping. And God showed me this. And then I got thinking, well, you know, everything in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses. If there's something significant in this, there'll be more. So I go, what about the 2 numbers in Daniel 12? 1,290 days and 1,335 days. So I added that. I'll give Alexa a break. So what is 688 plus 1,290? That comes to the year of 1978. What happened in 1978? I don't know. Nothing came to mind. And I kept looking and looking, and I found this. 1978, Camp David Accords between Israel and Egypt. September 17th, 1978. This led to they worked out, hammered out, did all the work in 1978 for the peace treaty between the first and only successful peace treaty between Egypt and Israel. Anwar Sadat and Menachem Begum. They won the Nobel Peace Prize on October 27, 1978. And it was signed in 1979, and as we know, it was at the beginning of the year, 1979, as we know in the religious calendar, that the year begins in Nisan and ends in Adar. So, point is it was in the same religious year, the signing of the treaty and the Camp David Accords when they built the framework. That was all in the same prophetic year. Okay, so there was another peace treaty in 1987, Israel-Jordan peace treaty. Prime Minister Shimon Peres and King Hussein. They met secretly they were trying to concede the West Bank to Jordan. It was never consummated, and basically the whole thing kind of fell apart, and it was continued in 1994. Now, going forward to 1993 was the Oslo Accords. In 93, the first one was Oslo I Accord, and it was signed in Washington, D.C. It was between Israel and PLO. Oslo II Accord was signed in Tibet, Egypt. Both of those were they kind of fell apart after the assassination of, let me see how I pronounce this right, Yitzhak Rabin. In 1995, that was kind of the end of that. It kind of fell apart. It was never very successful. But going back to the Israel-Jordan treaty that picked up again in 1994, they continued working on the treaty, and they concluded on October 6th, 1994. But 20 minutes before the signing, Hezbollah launched a rocket attack on northern Galilee. So that peace treaty kind of just turned, well, actually what they call it a non-belligerency agreement. So it's not really a peace treaty. Basically, they just kind of agreed to stop being violent towards one another. The point is the only treaty that's ever been successful in the history of Israel has been the 1978 Camp David Accord. That's the only one that there has never been. The last attack, the last time there was a war between Israel and Egypt was in 1973. Basically, the only successful peace treaty between Israel and a surrounding country was in 1978. So 1978 is very significant, and of course so is 1948. So my first two numbers are significant, 1260 and 1290. Point to very significant things in the land of Israel. Blessed are those who come to 1,335. Do you know where I'm going? You're gonna love this. This is your wake-up call. All you watchmen, you need to study this. You need to go with this. Alexa, what is 688 plus 1,335.
688 plus 1,335 is 2023.
2023, a date in our future. 2023. Something amazing and blessed is going to happen in 2023. What could that be? I didn't mean that. That rhyme was unintentional. Something blessed. I imagine it's either going to be on Passover or Feast of Trumpets. If Christ returns, we do know that the Feast of Trumpets is a coronation for a king. So that would be his return as king. That would represent his return. We also know that during the Feast of Trumpets there are 100 blasts of the trumpet. It's a 33 blast pattern that is repeated 3 times. It's more detailed than that. And then the last one is known as the last trump, the final trumpet. So that could be significant. Could happen somewhere around there. If you come back 3.5 years from that, it puts us, whoa, Passover, 2020. We could be smack in the middle of tribulation. You say, oh, no, we're not smack in the middle of tribulation. There's no way, because, giant flaming rocks aren't falling from the sky and the bowls of diseases aren't being released. Oh, wait. What about the coronavirus? Jesus said that the beginning are birth pains. There'd be pestilence, earthquakes, volcanoes. What if the Great Tribulation is not 3.5 years? Like I said, what if it's a year or 2 years? At the very end, Jesus said it had to be shortened or no flesh would survive. Okay, I want to propose a timeline to you that's a little different than anything that you've considered before. And here's the deal. We have to stop thinking outside the boundaries. The boundaries being like for the 7-year peace treaties, 0, 3.5, and 7. We as human beings, we kind of want to put everything in a nice, neat little order. For instance, let's consider the 2 witnesses and the 7-year covenant, because these are 2 things that are going to make a difference. The 2 witnesses, we have yet to see the 2 witnesses, and that's going to be one of the things. Is I think the rapture has to take place before the 2 witnesses come to earth. They are on the earth for 1,260 days. If we go by even boundaries, the 1335 date of 2023 and go back 3.5 years, we wind up at roughly probably Passover of 2020. In other words, now. But here's the thing, that's 1,290 days. So 1,260 days, that gives us a little grace. Plus, if you factor in the 1,335 days, that's another 45 days. So we've got 75 days of give or take there. Now, you're thinking, okay, that's pretty narrow. Could the wrath of God, the trumpets and the bowl judgments, take place in 75 days? I don't know. Maybe they could. Maybe they could happen. Boom, 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 boom. I'm telling you, I'm finding this as hard to believe, and I'm as skeptical of this as you are. And I got thinking that perhaps there's another facet, speaking of thinking on hard boundaries. We believe that when Christ returns, he returns at the very end of the 7 year of Daniel, Daniel's 70th year, that 7-year trip. Doesn't necessarily have to be so. And this is where it really starts to get interesting. So let's say hypothetically that Christ returns, but it's not at the end of the 7 years. Let's say he returns 6 years or 6 months or 1 year prior to the ending. Now let's think about that. Do you think that Jesus is going to show up, we're going to return to earth with all of us and instantly? The Armageddon war will be fought and won in 1 day. That all the world will be set straight in 1 day. What's the other thing that's going to happen in that period of time? I can't think of it right now. But we have 200 million soldiers from the kings of the east that are going to cross the dried up Euphrates River and for the Battle of Armageddon, right? The Valley of Megiddo. We all have been exposed to a little bit of, if you haven't served in the military, you've at least been exposed to a little bit of what it takes for battle. We've watched movies. There's strategy that has to be considered. There's logistics. There's a movement of armies and equipment. This doesn't take place in 1 day. Why do you think they go to war against Jesus, against Christ? Because he come to rule with an iron rod. They don't like that. They hate the fact that he's coming back and is taking over the governments of the world. So they rebel. This is not going to happen in 1 day. This is not going to happen in 1 month. This could be 6 months to a year. So I would like to propose something to you that you have probably never considered. What if Christ were to come back and return in the 6th year of the 7-year, 70th week of Daniel, in that 7-year trib? What if he came back in the 6th year? Okay, now that's interesting, because what does that mean? That means that say that the 7-year period ended in 2024, and you subtract 7 years from that, what do you get? You get 2017. Well, skeptical as you may be, there's a lot of pieces that begin to fit if you use the year 2017 as the start of the 7th year, the 70th year. Such as the Revelation 12 sign, which took place on September 23rd, 2017. The last Jubilee, which was sounded on September 29th through September 30th on 2017. This is all the fall Feast of Trumpets time. The 5th appointed day, 5th appointed time. The blood moons of 2014, 2015. There was one more. The Great American Solar Eclipse that took place on August 21st, 2017. So here's 4 events that took place. Well, 3 events that took place in the fall of 2017 and 1 that took place in the fall 2 years prior to that, the blood moons. Things really start to fit. Let's say, hypothetically, that the end of the 70, I'm just going to call it the 7-year tribulation to save time. So the 7-year trib, at the end, if say that's 2024, and you go back 3.5 years, let's take a look at that. So let's say that I'm going to go with Modims here, appointed days. So let's say that 2024, let's go with Rosh Hashanah, Festival of Trumpets, okay? You go back 3.5 years, you've got 2024, 2023, 2022, 2021. That would put us at Passover of 2021 for 3.5 years, going 3.5 years back from the Festival of Trumpets in 2024. Let's go back 3.5 years from Passover of 2024. Okay, so that's Passover 2023, 2022, 2021. Go back another 6 months from that, to be 3.5 years, and that puts the midpoint around Feast of Trumpets of 2020, 6 months from now. Okay, so the point is that we have now a midpoint at that 3.5 year mark. Now, I said don't think too much in boxes. We still have to pay attention to the midpoint, and the reason being is because regardless of what happens, the two witnesses are going to testify for 1,260 days. That's just barely shy of 3.5 years. We also have, and this is important, we also have a 7-year covenant. Now, I say a 7-year covenant, you're probably thinking, well, wait a minute, 7-year covenant. Church has got to be out of here when the Antichrist is exposed, and he's going to be exposed when the covenant's signed. But here's the thing. When he stands up in the holy place and declares himself to be God, what do you think is going to happen at the midpoint? What do you think is going to happen to the second half of that covenant? It's going to go right out the window. No one's going to care. At that point, he's like, the world's shook up. The Jews are saying, whoa, the Christians are already out of here. They're saying, whoa, this guy is the Antichrist. They're going to know at that point in time. So that means that the covenant, we only need 3.5 years from the beginning to the abomination that causes desolation. That's all we need is 3.5 years. So that can also fit from the midpoint down. Now, I made a video in 2017, and I was so certain that the rapture was going to take place in the Feast of Trumpets in 2017. I'm so embarrassed by it, but I took it down, and I realized that I may have been on to something, so I'm reposting it again. You can go back and you can watch it. Very enlightening. A lot of good information in there. So if Christ comes back in the 6th or 6.5 year of the 7-year trib, that means that we have there's time to finish the bowl judgments, the trumpet judgments, and the Battle of Armageddon. That also extends the midpoint out from, basically the midpoint would now be roughly Passover of 2020 now, puts the midpoint out to Passover of 2021. Okay, so that gives us like an extra year. If the first half of the tribulation is the wrath of the Lamb, and the first 4 seals are, actually the first 5 seals are rather insignificant. The 5th seal, those under the altar are saying, how long, Lord, before you avenge us? And he says, wait, fellow servants, wait a little longer until your brethren who would be killed was complete. So the first 5 seals, there's nothing horrific happening on planet Earth. It's not until the 6th seal when we have a great earthquake and the sun became black as sackcloth and the stars fell from earth and figs dropped as a fig leaf. We're raptured by then. I firmly believe that this is the point where we will be raptured, because this is when it starts getting really bad. We might actually, as the church may actually be around during part of that, because, well, I'll just read it here. Revelation 2:10. Do not fear of those things which you are about to suffer. Indeed, the devil is about to throw you in, some of you in prison, that you may be tested, that you will have tribulation 10 days. Be faithful until death, and I will give you the crown of life. I don't know what that means. I don't know, but it does say 10 days so of tribulation. So, interesting enough, there's a 10 days of awe between the Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. There's a 10-day period there. Days of awe. It's a very, very, very serious time. It's this 10 days that lead up to Yom Kippur. Could be significant. Don't know. But anyways, so we have, from the time they broke ground and sanctified the ground in the holy place for the Dome of the Rock, you got to read Daniel Mason's paper that he did, because it also describes the other mosque that is on the mount. That happens to be 1260 prophetic years. So the Dome of the Rock is 1260 solar years, and the other mosque, slips my mind right now, it's written down someplace, is 1260 prophetic years to 1948. Whoa! Seriously? Are you serious? It's two mosques that point to 1948, using the number 1260. So 1290 points, solar years, points to the Camp David Accords, which, by the way, was so hated by the Muslims that they killed Anwar Sadat. And they were very, very unhappy with him. But nonetheless, the peace treaty stuck. And then we have 1335 to the year, that takes us to the year 2023. Okay, so, in the mouth of two or three witnesses, God does nothing without first telling his people. There's going to be another sign for 2023, if it has any significance at all. What's the other sign going to be? How about this? Let's look at Jacob's trouble, 22 years. If, hypothetically, the return of Christ were to take place in 2023, and I'm not saying it is, I'm just saying hypothetically, God's given us three numbers. The first two are significant. The third one could be nothing. Could be nothing. But I don't know. There's a lot pointing to this. Daniel says, blessed is he who comes to 1335. So if there is significance to 1335, to the year 2023, which, by the way, I'm not setting a date, I'm setting a season. 2023, I'm saying that's a season. So if there's something significant to it, we should be able to take those other tribulation periods, Jacob's trouble, the 7th year of Daniel, subtract that from 2023, and we should get something significant. Something, if this is the opening period of Jacob's trouble, there will be something that is so significant that it changes the entire planet. The entire planet is changed by something that happens at the onset of Jacob's trouble. So let's take the year 2023 and subtract 22 from it. What do we get? Oh my goodness. Are you serious? We get the year 2001. What happened in the year 2001? What happened in the year 2001 that was so significant it changed our security, the way we fly? It finally woke up America to the Middle East, to the conflict in the Middle East. Twin Towers, 9/11, which, by the way, I'll have to go back and confirm this, but I believe that it took place on the Feast of Trumpets. That's significant alone. It just happened to happen on September 11th. That year happened to be the Feast of Trumpets. Tishra 1. I do remember that. Anyways, that was a very significant thing, probably in modern history. As a matter of fact, I will go as far as to say in all of history, in all of the history of mankind, We have never been so connected via the internet, news, flights, just all the technology we have. The world has become a very small place. Do you remember where you were on 9/11? If you were old enough, you probably remember watching those towers burn. That was a sad day. But it changed the world. The whole world watched it happen. We now have the TSA, we now have security check stations when we want to fly. Most of us at that time thought that Iraq and Iran was the same country. We didn't know anything about what was going on in the Middle East. We were totally ignorant. A lot of us still are. But a lot of us can tell where Syria is, Syria, Iran, Iraq, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Jerusalem, Jordan, Lebanon, Egypt, Libya, Ethiopia. That would have been all backwards for you because that was forwards for me. It woke the world up. Even if you didn't live in America, you watched the Twin Towers burn, you know about it. It affected the entire planet, and that was 22 years before the year 2023. So that's the second thing that points to 2023. Now, you still with me? Are you freaking out now? Are you completely blown away? Is your hair blown back like on a Maxwell cassette commercial? You have to be from the 80s to know what that means. Okay, so I am now finally going to go back to Revelation 11. And by the way, forgive me if I call it Revelations. I called it Revelations for years before somebody corrected me. So it's an old habit. Okay, now, here's where we divide up the tribulation, the 70th week. I'm in that habit too. I call it the tribulation. It's not the tribulation. It's the 70th week. We can call it the 70th week trib. The Jacob's trouble trib. The Great Tribulation trib. So back to chapter 11. I was given a reed like a measuring rod, and the angel stood saying, "Rise and measure the temple of God, the altar, and those who worship there, but leave out the outer court, the court which is outside the temple, and do not measure, for it has been given to the Gentiles, for they will tread the holy city underfoot for 42 months, or 42 prophetic months, or 1,260 years." That's not the first half of the 70th week. It's already taken place. He calls it 42 months here. He wants us to know he's speaking prophetically. Now, could it be something else that happens in 1,260 days? Or something else tramples underfoot? Probably. There will, you know. God likes to do this. He does mix shadows and types. He does this all the time. So now, if the 1,260 days, the 1,260 years that the Holy Mount is trampled underfoot by the Gentiles. Remember, there was no Muslims back then. The Muslims didn't begin. Well, actually, that was the birth of the Muslim religion. But everybody who wasn't a Jew was a Gentile. They were all Gentiles. So when it says Gentile, you know, Dome of the Rock, that's a Muslim thing, right? So if that 1,260 years is years and not days, it's not part of the 70th year trib. So what does that say about the two prophets, the two witnesses? They don't have to start at the midpoint in 3.5 years. They could be, the two witnesses could be at any point. As long as it's 1,260 days, it can fit anywhere in that time window from the beginning to the end. 1,260 years. 1,260 days, sorry. Forgive me, I don't make too many of these videos, so my mind likes to go places while I'm trying to talk. So that kind of changes. That kind of changes things. Changes the way we think about this. We could say that the 1260 days, or the 3.5 years, or the time and times and half a time, doesn't necessarily have to line up with the beginning, middle, or end. It could take place before the Great Trib, because I don't believe during this 1260 days, I don't believe that the witnesses are on earth during the bowl and the trumpet and bowl judgments. I think that happens after they leave. That has always puzzled me. How do we get the 1260 trampled underfoot, the 1260 time period of the two witnesses, and the bowls, and the trumpets and the bowls? It doesn't fit. It doesn't fit. But if you take the 1260 years out, trampled underfoot, remove that, and you could slide that 1260 days of the two witnesses any place you want, you got room at the end now. You got room at the end for the Great Tribulation. Remember, Great Tribulation is not an adjective. It's not like, wow, it was a great tribulation. It was so scary and so horrible. No, it's a noun. It's a pronoun. The Great Tribulation, which is set apart from the trib that we call the 70th week, or the trib that's the 22 years of Jacob's trouble. Okay, let's see. Where are we? Well, that pretty much wraps it up as far as this portion. There's more. But this portion, the purpose of this video was to explain that God does nothing without telling us first. How do we know that this date of 2023 is not God telling us something? What we don't know. And I'm not setting a date, I'm setting a season. 3.5 years. It'll also be at the end of Trump's second term, 2023. And it says at the last Trump. Okay, so I'm reloading this video. It's called the 8th Modim Jubilee Rapture. And there's a lot of pieces that start to really fall into place if we look at the years 2017 to 2024. Things could escalate very quickly from this coronavirus. I believe in my heart, I really feel strongly that we're in the beginning of birth pains that Jesus spoke of, and that time is coming upon us really quickly. And the thing about birth pains, except for Braxton Hicks, once they start, they don't stop. I mean, real birth pains. They just get closer together. So I'm not seeing this as something that's we're gonna be okay and we're gonna go on another 10 years. Who knows? I don't know. I'm skeptical about this whole thing as well, because this seems like too soon to me. About go ahead and watch this. Forgive me for being overconfident that the rapture was going to take place. But go ahead and watch it, because it's got a lot of good information, and it makes everything from the 2017 to 2024 fall into place. I mean, seriously, things fit. Otherwise, if things go back to normal and it goes out of several years, I mean, what was the purpose of the blood moons? What was the purpose of the Revelation 12 sign? And the sign of the dragon was, in his last moments, he's really angry because he knows his time's really short. And, I mean, look what's happened since 2017. President Trump's been through it. Why? Because President Trump has completely destroyed the plans of the enemy. And I'm not talking about Republicans and Democrats. I'm talking about Ephesians 6. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against rulers of darkness of this age, against spiritual wickedness in high places. That's who we're battling against. Republican, Democrat, we're all pawns. The whole political party is a pawn. The powers of darkness are what's ruling this earth. And Trump has really thrown a wrench in the gears. And that's why they're trying everything to get rid of him. And who knows? Maybe this whole coronavirus was a distraction. Maybe they're hoping they can take out the president with it. I don't know. It's Satan's desperate because he knows his time's short. Anyways, consider that 2017 to 2024. Man, things really fit. Now, I'm debating whether or not to continue on this video. I'm going to continue on this video with the other parts that are significant. I may cut it into it, make it its own video. I don't know. But anyways, so now, while you're absorbing all that, and there is a significant amount of scripture that points to the year 2023. I'm not setting a day, I'm not setting an hour. I'm pointing to a year, a season. And don't even write me comments, because it just, if you write a comment about that no man knows the day or the hour, yeah, you're just showing your ignorance. You might as well just write and just go in the comment box and say, hey, I'm stupid. You might as well just do that. Please just say, I'm a stupid idiot. Because if you make a comment about that, then clearly you are a stupid idiot. Sorry. People can be really mean on YouTube if you don't have a channel and you've never experienced it. It's phenomenal how mean people can be. But that's a different story. So, I want to take you to something. And in that day, in the twinkling of an eye, we will be caught up and forever be with the Lord. At the sound of the trumpet. When is this trumpet going to take place? When is the rapture going to take place? When is the trumpet going to be blown and we go? I can tell you when. I can't give you a date, but I can tell you what's going to happen. And I'm pretty sure about this. And it actually makes perfect sense. And you can make up your own mind. Just like you can make up your own mind about the 2023. Take it or leave it. That's up to you. Okay, chapter 9. The book of Zechariah. So, with that little teaser, I'm going to leave you. And I'm going to go ahead and make this into a two-part video. It shouldn't take me long to finish up part 2 because most of the recording is done, so it's just editing now. You should see part 1, and then within a day or two you'll see part 2. Stick around for the end of part 2. I have an invitation there for you to, if you don't know Jesus, for you to ask him into your life. Like I said, this video is mostly for Watchmen, but I know there's a few of you out there that are going to watch it. That aren't Watchmen, and you may be curious who Jesus is and what you need to do to be saved. It's really quite simple. So anyways, I'm going to leave you for now, and we'll see you in part 2.